Welcome to Cutting Edge Web Content Development, the podcast where we delve into the world of CMS systems and their crucial role in website and web content development. In each episode, we'll explore the reasons why founders, CEOs, CTOs, and CMOs of web content development companies need CMS systems to thrive in the digital landscape. Get ready to uncover the secrets behind successful website management, content creation, and seamless user experiences. Here's your host, Jonathan Ames.
Welcome to Cutting Edge Web Content Development, a podcast by Butter CMS. Here we share insights on the intersection of content and web development and how you can align those too often competing forces to improve efficiency and business results. Joining us on this episode is Ram Gohil, Head of SEO at UK Meds. Welcome to the show, Ram.
Hi, nice to meet you, Jonathan. Nice to be here. Appreciate you inviting me along.
I'd love to hear tell our audience a little bit about your career and kind of some of the experiences you've had, projects you've worked on.
Yeah, sure. So currently the head of SEO for an online prescription service. And essentially I've worked in SEO for probably the better part of 10 years, which is pretty crazy to say when I think about it and put it into perspective. So I started off agency side, and then after about 4 or so years, I moved into more sort of client side roles, focusing purely like on SEO and specializing in it. And I guess the one thing that I really love and I'm passionate about SEO is the fact that Google's always changing the goalposts. So you're always having to learn. So, I don't believe anyone when they say they know everything about SEO, because I don't think it's ever possible. So the beauty of it is you always keep learning. So it's a great field to be in.
It is a great field to be in. And no one who goes back 10 years really got their start in SEO, because really SEO didn't exist. I mean, it was a nascent industry at that point, and there were no degrees in it. And so it's always interesting to me to see how people ended up in SEO. Well, you've had a really interesting topic you came here to talk to us about, AI and SEO. So AI, of course, has been all over the news for the last year, but there's a lot of people who are interested in using AI in SEO, but they're wondering, is it safe to do and how can I do it? So how would you describe the strategy of using AI to improve SEO and traffic?
So I think, like as you said, over the last sort of year, just over a year or so, AI has become a massive thing. Obviously, like with the invention of like ChatGPT, people have started to use that for like everything, whether it's like SEO, web development, content creation, all of that sort of thing. I think probably for SEO, like as a very current and topical thing, Google have currently launched their helpful content update, which I think completed about a week or so ago. And also on top of that, there's the current Google Core update as well. And I think all of those updates at the moment are really like focusing down on content that's just been purely created by AI. So I think there's always a very sort of big push towards making sure that any sort of content that's created is helpful for a user, is accurate, it's truthful. I think that all sort of goes in line from an SEO perspective with Google's EEAT. So all about like experience, expertise, authority, trust, all those sorts of things. So I think when it comes to creating content with AI, it's really important to make sure that you always factor that into the content that you're producing with it. So I think the human element of creating content with AI is massive, especially when it comes to like both user experience and SEO as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think AI, as everyone sees the benefits of it. And when you're talking about EEAT, and I think that is one thing that's since the core, since early, I'd say 2010, the idea of quality content has been at the core of search results. And so creating something that's quality, there's a lot of different definitions of that, but how can you create quality content with AI without getting penalized by Google or by creating something that's, substandard?
Definitely. So I think in terms of like a personal strategy that I've used, I always look for sort of opportunities. I think in SEO, like that's something that people always do, just trying to find like opportunities in terms of like keywords that might be low difficulty, but also low competition as well, with a high search volume. So when you spot like a gold mine like that, you always sort of think, is there like a chance that we could create some sort of content here that would really like help users as well, for all those people that are searching for a particular search term. But obviously, again, with everything in mind with EAT, making sure that it's all accurate and truthful. So, for example, like with content that we've produced, we'll look at like things. There was a 10-minute gout cure piece of content that we created for the online prescription service that I work for. And that was basically like a search term that people were searching for, which there was like a big search volume for. And on top of that, like there was a low keyword difficulty. So it seemed like a good opportunity at the time. So we went about creating a piece of content using ChatGPT, got it to create like a structure for the content. And after that, we got like the different elements of the structure created with ChatGPT as well. And then once it was produced, it was a case of looking through it, sense checking it all to make sure it all read properly, was appropriate for UK English audience, which is what my client sort of caters to. And just making sure that all of that was accurate from that point of view. And then from that stage, it was a case of making sure that in terms of accuracy, I could find like credible sources that back up what was being produced by the AI as well, to make sure that it was truthful, accurate, and also sort of made sense as was still useful as a content piece for the user. Because at the end of the day, any sort of content, I think any sort of good bit of content always has to help the user at the end of the day. So if it's useful and helpful, that's the most important thing. Like it shouldn't be a long piece of content for the sake of it. It should be like whether ChatGPT says it or not. It's always good to like shorten it down. If it doesn't need to be that big. So I'd always say quality over quantity. So the approach me to it. Yeah. And in terms of like that particular piece, it seems to rank really well. We've generated quite a lot of traffic off the back of it as well. So that sort of strategy seemed to work for us. And that was just using AI as like a tool to enhance our sort of content efforts and content creation efforts, really.
So you're using it more as a beginning writer, and then you made edits and kind of cut it down from there to make it more succinct. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sure. Exactly that. So it's a case of, as I say, just seeing what it comes out with. We're lucky as humans that we have a brain that we can rely on, and we've got like a good sense of judgment to what's accurate, what would read well, and what would be helpful to other humans as well. Whereas I'd say AI like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, I don't think they're as developed as maybe in the future one day they might be, but at the moment as it stands, I don't think they're as good as a judge of what is accurate and useful information for a particular user.
Yeah, I think there's certainly something to be said for pairing AI together with humans to produce something that's better than either could do on their own. I think a lot of people have come to me talking about AI and SEO, and they've looked at it from an efficiency standpoint. They're like, well, I can go get it to do research. It'll save me time. In this case, you're saying, create a first draft basically, and then we'll edit that down and make it better. But I think that there are some things that AI can do simply because it is able to do it so quickly that we wouldn't normally do on our own. For instance, if you got a writer to go out and do an article, that writer might, go research, 5 or 6 sources, put those together, come up with an article based on those ideas. Whereas AI could go out and look at, 200 sources, and it's no writer who's going to take the time to look at 200 sources. So you do have a greater breadth of information. I think one of the concerns people have with AI generated content is they're worried about the hallucinations. They're like, well, what if it puts in something that sounds good, but there's not something there? So you were mentioning something about going in and verifying that there was a credible source. What's your process for that tactically?
Of course, yeah. So in terms, especially for the field that we work in medical, is extremely important. Again, another aspect of what Google looked for in content, especially when it comes to sectors like the medical sector, is the your money, your life principle. So obviously, in terms of that, like a background to that is that basically, like if a customer is coming onto a website, purchasing a medication, it's something that they're spending money on. And again, a medication is something that's going to affect their life as well and their health. So the content that is produced for like this sort of sector, it's really important to make sure that all the information is accurate, just to make sure that any sort of user that's reading it they feel safe and confident that the information they're reading is accurate. So I think in terms of that, like the process that we have used in terms of making sure that the content that's produced by ChatGPT is accurate is basically making sure that you search for studies. Essentially, like I go back to like my university days to what I used to do in assignments where you're Harvard referencing. So looking for medical studies that back up what you're sort of saying in your content with the findings of their studies. Similarly, not just studies, but also looking at like authority websites like drugs.com, NHS, those sorts of like high authority places where you know the information is peer reviewed by medical experts, and just making sure that that sort of aligns with what the content that's been produced is also saying as well.
Mm-hmm. So it's just a manual review of making sure that then those locations where the data could be validated are high authority.
Exactly,
Right.
and also on the back of that as well, if the content that's been produced isn't accurate, again as humans we'd go back and we change that to make sure that it is accurate, and then find sources that back that up as well. So I think in terms of the way I like to use AI is to make the whole experience more efficient in terms of like speed of developing the content, and then from there on, it's a case of like putting the human input into it to make sure that it's still useful and accurate.
Now I'm wondering, I've never done this in ChatGPT, but if you had ChatGPT or some other AI create a piece, could you then not write a prompt for it and say, hey, could you go back and cite all the places where this information comes from, and then ask it basically for a list that you could then go and manually check?
So I would say you could potentially do that, and it would give you some form of results. The only caveat to that might be that, especially with ChatGPT, because it's limited to data from up until September 2021, I think it is, if my memory serves me right, it may be limited in terms of what it comes back with. And sometimes it just produces fake sort of links as well. So you're getting from based on experience, like from what I've seen, it doesn't always work. So I think that's where like the importance of human sort of intervention comes in again, and just making sure that you're doing the sort of groundwork for the research side of things, but then it also helps you in terms of efficiency for content creation as well there.
Yeah. I know one interesting use I've seen of AI was there was a copywriter who he wrote Google Ads for a living. And what he did is he actually had the AI only reference his own work, all the ads that he had written, and then use those and reconfigure them because he's looking for variations in his ads. And so he had written a very complex prompt into Google Sheets and basically made it look at his own stuff and then create variations based upon, what kind of audience he was wanting to write for. And I'm wondering if you could limit AI by saying, hey, I only want you to pull from these credible sources like you're mentioning. And then if that might make it easier to then proof it, knowing that it was looking at a more limited data set.
So I think in terms of an example that I could probably give you where I've fed it information to sort of take into context when producing new content, it can come down to like competitor gap research. So for example, where we've seen that a competitor has form of content that we'd like to produce, I may look at that particular piece of content, put it into ChatGPT, and get it to just basically process it, and then say produce this piece of content related to this topic with this content that was given to you previously. See what it comes out with, and then that's like a template for it to like make a more informed decision on what it's producing as well. But I think as you mentioned yourself, John, like I think it's a case of being very specific with the prompts that you put in to make sure that you get the output that you want. I think like initially, like I've had a lot of fun playing with AI, and it's initially I remember being like very polite and doing the whole very English thing of, please can you produce this bit this sort of thing for me. But then I realized as time's gone on, the best way to get results from it is a case of just being very direct with it, and it will give you results that you're sort of hoping for on the back of it as well by being that way as well.
Good points. All right. So prompt engineering, that's another industry that's nascent right now. Maybe in 10 years, it'll be like SEO was 10 years ago. But as far as, do you have any tips, that you and your team use when you're trying to create prompts to create SEO content?
Yeah, sure. So I think a lot of it comes down to trial and error. So you've just got to keep testing until you find something that's a winning formula for you. Because for me, I think what might work for me might not be necessarily what works best for another person. But in terms of the prompts themselves, I'd say trial and error, being as direct as possible with what you're sort of hoping to get from the prompts. So, for example, we've used it to produce product descriptions, for short descriptions, for long descriptions. Again, with all of that, it's a case of if you're happy with the content that gets produced by the AI, just sense checking it, again, making sure that it's backed and based on facts, I'd say. So just making sure all of that's accurate. I've also used it in the past to create a JSON FAQ schema as well. So again, it's like it helps me in terms of like web development aspects, because I can sort of do that myself and implement it on the website. So in terms of prompts, just making sure that, for example, if I want JSON schema to be in HTML format, to specify like I'd like it to create a JSON schema in a HTML format in a script tag as well, so that I can just copy it and put it straight into the website. So again, it saves me having to sort of speak to my web development colleagues to create it, saves time and resource there. So I think it's just making sure that you're as specific as possible with what you want out of it. And the more specific you can be, the better results you'll get from it as well. But there's so many, as an SEO, there's so many uses, not just purely for content creation, but for like optimization, for like, as I mentioned, like the coding aspects of it. It's a good tool to be able to use to like help make what I do in SEO in my role like more efficient, I'd say.
So that's interesting. You said in SEO optimization, could you ask ChatGPT to look at a page based on Google's current standards and suggest any optimizations that need to happen?
Again, so this is something that we've tried, and it's a bit hit and miss with the data. But I think maybe it's potentially because with ChatGPT specifically, I think the data is limited to September 2021. Hopefully they will update it. But again, as a strategy, potentially you could feed it specific bits of information to try and produce something with that as a context to what you want it to look at. Again, I know with ChatGPT 4, you can you've got the option to upload documents, whether that's images or spreadsheets. So again, spreadsheets opens up the door to putting in keyword data and getting information that way as well through using ChatGPT. So you've always got that option there as well.
Yeah, I tend to think of AI kind of like hiring a junior, content writer or a junior developer. They could do a lot of work. You just always want to check the work that they do.
Definitely.
It's like you would in the real world. If you hired someone junior, you wouldn't expect them to never make a mistake as a human. So same way with an AI. I think you have to look at it that way and just expect that someone more experienced is going to put their eye on it. But it's interesting to see people like you testing different ways to use AI, not just a content creation, but hey, can you evaluate this piece of content for SEO tips things we might have overlooked? So yeah, that's great. What do you think the limitations are of AI? And do you think those are things that are going to be overcome in the future?
Sure. I mean, if I had to pick one thing like as the key sort of limitation, I would say probably the accuracy. So I think, I think I mentioned it a few minutes ago, it's a case of using AI to create content that's sort of create content at mass. But I think the human element of analyzing that content and making sure it's accurate and truthful and factual is like a key component at the moment. I don't think that the value of that can be understated. So whilst people might think that the robots are taking over and it's all just purely like going to be AI in the next couple of years, I think for the foreseeable future, I do think that it will be human input that's going to be really important when it comes to using AI. And I think maybe like prompt engineers and like those sorts of roles will become more like prominent as well, whether that replaces like SEO and other digital marketing aspects potentially in the future. That could be the case. But I think if there was a limitation, I think AI is not probably at a place just yet where I see it can do everything perfectly accurately. So I think that's why there's still a need for having to sort of check for citations to make sure the information that's being produced is accurate. So that would be my big limitation, I think, as it stands currently. But obviously in the future that could change as AI develops and becomes even smarter.
Now, you currently use ChatGPT. Have you tried any other large language models or AI?
So I haven't tried Google Gemini just yet, but in its previous form, Google Bard, I tried that, and I have to be honest with you, that was terrible. It was just that's to put it politely. It was terrible. So I think they've made improvements to Gemini, and I know some people have been able to use it in the beta mode at the moment. Again, it's something on my list to try, and I'm excited to see how it's changed and improved from the previous version of Google Bard. But yeah, at the moment, ChatGPT is the main tool that I've used and we've used as a business. And it's been really good in terms of making like content production more efficient, not just for myself, but for like content writers, for the web development team, and everyone. So I think we're always keen to just try new sort of formats. So I think Google Gemini will be the next one that we do try.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering when they're going to come out with an AI that combines both generative and large language models so that you could, from a content perspective, say, I would like a web page that's about this topic and put in 3 to 4 images. And it'll basically write it and create some generative AI images that would fit with what it just wrote.
Sure.
And it seems like you could combine those two into a workflow, but I haven't seen anything like that unless you've seen something.
So in terms of images, I've tested like image AI generation, and the results can vary. It can be very good or not as very bad. Yeah, very true. So you've got, I think again, it all comes down to just trial and error, testing, written human prompts, I think are the key thing. And it's just making sure that you're as direct as possible with those as well, to get like images that are what you're actually hoping for. But again, I've seen like the image generation AI, like DALL-E, or I don't know if I said that correctly, but DALL-E or DALL-E, like that's improved so much in the last year or so in terms of what it produces for you. So yeah, I think in terms of like image generation AI, I think that's also going to continue to improve. So I think we will eventually get to a stage, like you said, John, where you'll be able to do exactly that, and it will be accurate to what you're hoping for it to produce straight away.
Yeah. There always will be a need for a user, for someone to provide direction and creativity, the spark that AI is going to use to then follow. I just always remember, whatever the tool is, it can only amplify, what humans have created at this point. Now, perhaps in 10 years, they will create a fully sentient AI that can create its own creative sparks. But for right now, I think that's still well within the range of humanity, and we're going to need to provide direction. So
for sure.
A lot of interesting things though on the horizon. I mean, things change so quickly, even just a year ago, between what people were talking about was possible and what is possible today.
100%.
Any further points or things you want to bring up about using AI in SEO?
Yeah, so I would say, as I say, it's not just a tool from just a purely SEO perspective in terms of like technical SEO, like keyword research and competitor gaps or research for content. As I say, I think in terms of coding, it can help make SEO more efficient for those sorts of aspects. So like, for example, different schemas, producing templates. And then again, in terms of like prompts, you can give it an example schema template. You can say, please include or exclude certain elements, and then it will produce a template for you there. If you want it to be in HTML format, you can ask it to produce it in that format, and then you'll be able to use it in whatever sort of CMS you'd like to use it in. So I think in terms of like using AI from an SEO perspective, it helps improve like quite a few different areas of SEO, not just like the odd thing here and there. Even for suggestions for like content ideas, you can use it, but again, it's also then sense checking to see if it's justifying creating a content piece based on doing your own research for search volumes, and sort of checking if there is that sort of market there for creating in the first place. But again, you just want to make sure that you're creating, even if it's AI that's creating it, you're using the time is money essentially. So making sure that you're spending time on creating a bit of content that's actually going to provide value to the user as well as the business. So again, using it in that sort of way, I think is a good way to do it, speaking personally. So yeah, I'd say it's just a tool that you add as an extra arrow to your bow. So again, in terms of SEO, you'd use AI, you'd still use all your sort of keyword tools that you use. Myself personally, I like to use SEMrush for keyword research, Ahrefs as well. Yeah, I'd say like it's an extra sort of weapon for you to use to try and produce like content that's going to help people.
Sure. So as far as what's the best SEO win that you've seen where AI was a part of that?
So from personal experience, like I've used it to create quite a lot of quiz content. So it's something again that before we weren't sure whether we'd be able to create because we're not like we haven't sort of invested in creating like coded quizzes. But using ChatGPT, we've been able to create quiz content that's like interactive, and it's helped us to just basically be able to create that type of content that's interesting for people to use. It's not just something that they read, but it's something they can actually engage with. So it's helped us to produce that sort of content without us having to have like the coding skills to be able to create it. And yeah, it's been a useful tool to create that type of content to help people, which is different to what we've done before. So again, it's always trying to look for content, look at ways of producing content that's going to be engaging as well as useful. So in terms of like quiz content, in terms of like video and images, like you can do quite a lot with it. I know there's I forget what it's called now, but I know ChatGPT is going to be releasing a form of like video production content. AI, which is going to begin with S. I've completely forgot the name of it now. But yeah, it's meant to be really good, and I think people will start, and businesses will start to use that more and more as well to produce like media-rich content as well. So I think that's probably the next phase, I'd say.
Right. Yeah, I've seen some of the videos that AI have created, and it's pretty mind-blowing. They gave one example. They said, show an example or a video of, the American West in the 1800s. And you see this kind of off-color, Western town, and you're like a drone flying over it. And of course, this kind of footage never would have existed at that time, but it looked very convincing. And if you looked very closely, yes, you could find, anomalies in there, but mind-blowing that it was able to create this, probably a 10-second clip just out of a prompt.
Yeah,
and
sure.
make it convincing enough that at first glance, you look at it and go, could that be real?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How real it's getting, and I think it's only ever going to get more and more realistic as we move forward. So, the clip I saw of the ChatGPT video AI that they're producing, that looks phenomenal. To be fair, so I don't think it's that far off the horizon, really.
Yeah, I think you're correct. So, Ram, where do you get your inspiration and your new updates about AI? I mean, is it a podcast? Is it books? Is it websites? People you talk to?
It's a combination of everything. Like we're in a webinar right now, so there's different webinars. Just being involved with them and seeing what other people have done. Reading on different websites. So I personally like Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land. They're just personal favorites, but there's loads out there. It's whatever you find useful. Even Moz as well. So it's using resources like that to see what people have tried and tested. And again, it's always in the back of my mind, it's always important to make sure that whatever I'm using AI for, I'm always keeping like Google's EEAT and Your Money, Your Life principles in the back of my mind for the content that it's producing. Because I think that's critical. Again, I don't want to be creating content for the sake of creating it, if that makes sense. For me, I'm always keen to produce content that's going to help a user, and also like drive good quality traffic to the website as well. So all of that sort of a factor in before I even start using it in the first place. So I think it's important to do that from my perspective, and I think a lot of SEOs probably think the same way as well, to be fair.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, from your own experience in your career, I asked this question of many people. If you could go back in time to the beginning of your career and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
keep trying things, keep testing things. Like I think if I had to go back and give myself like advice, is what I said at the start of this podcast. I think it's a case of you can never know everything in SEO. So just always keep researching, keep learning, because the goalposts are always changing. I've spoken a lot about Google, but there's obviously lots of other search engines out there as well. And one day, who knows, maybe Google might not be the main search engine. Maybe it could be ChatGPT, it could be something like TikTok. You don't know, but it's always a case of just being on top of like whatever the current trends are, and just trying to just keep learning to make sure you're trying to tick all the correct goalposts that Google are creating for the new guidelines that they're producing for helpful content, for mobile friendliness, for like user experience, all of those sorts of metrics. So just keep learning. Like you can never know everything in SEO. That would be honestly, my bit of advice.
That to me is the exciting part of digital, is there always is something new to learn. It's not static. You can't ever feel like I've learned it all. It's done.
Yeah.
Anything digital, it's always evolving. So to me, that's exciting too.
For sure.
Well, so Ram, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you'd like to connect, feel free to. I'm on LinkedIn, so if you search Ram Gohil on LinkedIn, you'll see me there. So look forward to getting in touch if you found anything interesting, or if you've got any sort of questions. Feel free to get in touch.
Ram, appreciate all your insights tonight. It's been really helpful. I think just talking to you has expanded my view of some of the things that our team could do with AI and some of the things that are coming there in the future. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much as well, Jonathan. Really appreciate your time, and it's been really enjoyable talking to you too.
Cutting Edge Web Content Development is brought to you by Butter CMS. To find out how you can build better with Butter, stop wasting dev time, and free your marketers from your legacy CMS, visit buttercms.com. Also, make sure to search for Cutting Edge Web Content Development in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Butter CMS, thank you for listening.